you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. First, we have approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. At this time, I want to call everyone's attention to a longtime resident of our community who has passed away, Ms. Virginia Walsh. She passed away on Thursday, October 19th, at her home with her family by her side. She enjoyed reading and was a member of All Saints Catholic Church in Manassas. Please remember the Walsh family in your thoughts and prayers. Please join us for the pledge, and Vice Mayor Mensing, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we're moving on to public comment time. We have one individual signed up, Mr. Mike Smith. If you could approach the microphone, limit yourself to 3 minutes, state your name and address. Thank you.
Mike Smith, 102 Colfax. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. I've got a couple of topics I wanted to talk about tonight. First, I believe we've got on the agenda tonight a follow-up to the community trash pickup. And thank you to all of the residents and staff who participated. I talked to several of them earlier today who unfortunately won't be able to be with us here tonight, but they're here in spirit and hopefully watching on YouTube. Just wanted to say personally, I'm getting a little frustrated with the trash situation. A few weeks ago, I picked up a pair of soiled underpants in the gutter out front of my home, and one of my neighbors reported finding used condoms. I'm concerned that the trash situation is getting worse and hope that we can continue to have these events and encourage more neighbors to come out to help before this turns into some kind of public health crisis or something. On my second topic, I'd like to start by saying a few weeks ago I saw something amazing right here in this room. A room full of residents stood up to say they support my family in our driveway dispute. The city wanted to make sure neighbors attended this hearing. They posted about us on the city website, had me send certified letters to all of our neighbors, even posted about us in the newspaper. And our neighbors came. They wanted to make it clear that parking is an important issue in this city. The property rights are important. And that when a person pays for something lawfully and in good faith, the city must set the highest bar to consider taking that away. And in our opinion, the city failed. They failed to read the room, and they instructed the board to vote against the clearly spoken will of the residents of this city. And that makes me a little angry, not just for us and the other families going through this issue, but on behalf of the residents that took their time out of their busy schedules to come out and speak. What's the point in asking residents to come out when you're not even going to listen to them? Manassas Park wants to attract residents. It wants the city to grow. But how are these new residents going to feel when they learn that the city goes after upstanding members of the community over things that occurred years ago through no fault of their own? Do you think people are going to want to move here? Do you think businesses are going to want to come here? So again, thank you to the residents who came out to support us, because the residents believe that these issues are important and the city needs to do better listening to their residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. City Manager, do you have any comments?
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. I have a small comment. Mr. Smith, thank you for your comments. We appreciate all residents who speak. But this is an issue that is not about reading the room. All 7 members of the governing body took an oath of office. And in that oath, we swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Code of Virginia, and the laws of Manassas Park. So it's our responsibility to support the enforcement of the laws and the regulation of the city. Okay.
Microphones working.
It's not on this computer.
Okay.
In the state's constitution.
I work in tech, I'm used to technical issues. It's okay.
Yeah.
It happens.
Is it? Laszlo, is it okay to speak again?
Yes.
Or is there going to be more feedback?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
We're good. Sorry.
Is it okay? Okay. So in light of the oath that we took, it is our responsibility, our collective responsibility, to support the enforcement of the laws and the regulations of the city, and that is full stop. So although I appreciate your perspective, that's my personal perspective. Just because something was not enforced a few years ago does not mean that we stop enforcement now. But thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who is not signed up to make public comment but who would still like to make public? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
First of all, I think he was referring to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right,
The hearing,
yeah.
not you personally.
Right. But second, I would like to thank the staff that helped organize last Thursday's veterans flag raising ceremony. Also would like to thank our guest speakers that came. We had a very good turnout despite it being very cold. Next year we're going to grow it more next year as well.
Yeah,
But also thank you to all the veterans in our city.
yeah, it was a great event, wasn't it? Yeah. And Mr. Smith, I do realize that you were referring to the BZA. However, I also sense that that there was an expectation for some action from the governing body. That's why I made that statement. But thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Okay. The governing body at this point would like to recognize and congratulate Manassas Park Public Schools head football coach Mark Teague for being named Coach of the Week by the Washington Commanders Charitable Foundation. He demonstrates positive leadership and true dedication to students. So congratulations, Coach Teague. Okay, moving on to 5, we have public hearing. We have 2 public hearings. Our first public hearing is regarding designated snow emergency routes. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, residents, staff, guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. I'm here to present tonight the public hearing information for a potential code amendment to section 19.4 through 19.8, which is our snow emergency route section of our codes of ordinances. We are about to finish off a project that will extend Connor Drive all the way from Euclid Avenue to Route 28. That will be a vital connection between Route 28 and Euclid Avenue, and will also be a sort of back hub to a densely populated residential area. As such, we would like to recommend that Connor Drive become a snow emergency route. And also Euclid Avenue in its entirety. I do believe that our emergency plan still uses the high school as a potential shelter in place, a potential shelter for emergencies, and it only makes sense that Euclid Avenue be maintained open and clear. It's a very high volume traffic road, and it is a key hub through our city. So the public hearing tonight is open to discuss adding those 2 streets to the list, the current inventory of snow emergency routes in the city. And the city manager can prohibit parking on snow emergency routes anytime there is an official snow emergency declaration. The only other modification to the ordinance was a misspelling of golf court. It was for some reason spelled G-U-L-F in the previous iteration of the ordinance, so that would be a correction that's also recommended. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I have a quick question, and I'm not sure if it's best answered by you or the city manager. Connor Drive, as it now is, it's just back-to-back cars. So my question is when there is a snow emergency and those folks have to move those cars, where do we expect them to go? Will they come down here and park?
Yeah, when we were doing construction, that's what we recommended, is to park somewhere, a public parking lot for that period of time. It's not ideal,
Yeah.
but it's the same issue residents Matthew Drive face, or Polk, or others as well.
So by a public parking lot, we're talking maybe, because I'm also thinking down here, eventually we're gonna have limited parking down here, like capped at so many hours. Parking here, or maybe parking at the rec center, or parking at the schools.
Sure, any public parking lot that
Okay.
they can find parking in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or in that case, a public street that's not on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And of course, we'll let folks know. They'll see the signs,
Which signs?
the snow emergency signs. We'll put those up along that.
Yeah, when
street.
yeah, absolutely, those signs will be installed, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And can we also let the HOA know that's over there?
The HOA know about the change in law?
Mhm.
Yeah, we can send them an email letting them know.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Out of curiosity, because a few residents have reached out to me asking for their street to be designated a snow emergency route, what is the qualification to make a street a snow emergency route?
So it's usually, we're looking for highly densely populated hubs and a place where you need major road access. Clearly, we can't make every street in the city, but you want to at least get within, several hundred feet of a densely populated area. This particular Connor Drive would give you quicker access for emergency vehicles coming from the south, like responding from Manassas. They'll be able to make a right-in onto Connor and quickly access the back of that subdivision, whereas our own fire department still has to loop around or go up and make a U-turn. In addition, Connor Drive already will extend across Euclid Avenue down into an area where we're proposing nearly 1,000 residential units. So that will give a clear access from Route 28 or Euclid Avenue for responding entities coming from the south to get directly to those areas. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, follow-up? Nope. Question?
This is a quick one. I guess when a snow emergency is declared, these roads have priority for plowing and
Yeah.
salting. Is
Yeah,
it-
we don't really, we try to not touch any of the other streets until we have the snow emergency routes under control.
Yeah.
And so once we can see black on those and get treatment chemical down on them, and we feel like we can leave them alone for a while, that's when we start hitting the side streets and really starting to try to clear the entire city. But yes, you're correct. At first, the focus of all snow removal is on the emergency routes.
And then a follow-up to that would be, are these routes posted online somewhere on our city website?
I don't think we have a map, but we're getting to that point with GIS where we could clearly create a map.
Yeah, I mean,
and
a
make
little
it
map with a
available.
red outline of all the emergency routes.
We can do that, and that, whenever we declare it too, in our declaration, we remind everyone what the roads are as well, but we can add a map to that declaration.
Yeah, I think
so
it'll be
people know.
beneficial.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, is there anyone in the public who would like to make public comment on this public hearing? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Calvin. Our second public hearing is regarding an amendment to the commercial vehicle ordinance. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. This is a simple amendment that I brought up beforehand related to the no commercial overnight parking regulation. The weight class of 10,000 pounds for trucks is a little bit more helpful for enforcement, because on some commercial vehicles that are 10,000 pounds or over, the DMV will actually provide that permanent truck tag that I provided in the memo. So it just helps us out with enforcement, because it's hard to distinguish between different weight classes. This is just an extra tool to help us to make it easier to enforce.
Any questions? Questions?
Yeah, no.
Yes,
So,
go ahead.
this is including the ones that they park on the driveway, or?
Let me relook at the code, but it's, yes, if it's part of the permitted vehicle definition, let me just double check again. Give me 1 second, because remember, there's two components. One that's for the street, that's the definition of commercial vehicle, and it's
Right.
covered. And then let me see if this is permitted vehicle, yes, a commercial vehicle with a weight of less than 10,000 pounds, so yes, it would apply.
Oh, so even on the driveway, if it's over 10,000, they'll be in violation?
They would be in violation, yeah.
Follow-up? No? No further comments or questions? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on this issue? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. My understanding is both of these will be voted on November 14th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And do you guys want those in unfinished business or consent agenda?
I think they're pretty straightforward. My suggestion would be consent agenda. What does everybody think?
agree.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we all seem to be in
Okay.
agreement. Okay, thank you, Laszlo. Okay, moving on to recognitions. We have actually two. We have cleanup certificates of appreciation and certificates of participation for the Halloween House of Lights. Councilmember Hampton.
Yes. Good evening. So, about 2 months ago, we had a cleanup, our last cleanup of the year, and we focused on Costello Park, and we had, I think around, including the committee members, probably around 10 of us, I think. And we'll talk a little bit later when we do talk about the community maintenance working group, but altogether we collected around 50 pounds of trash. And that's from Costello Park, the streets surrounding Costello Park, and parts of Manassas Drive. And so for those individuals that came and assisted us, I wish to give them some certificates of recognition, because without their assistance, that trash would still be there. So with that, there's only two folks there that are here tonight, but I will mention their names, and then the folks that are here, afterwards you come up here and I'll give you the certificates. And I can never pronounce Stephanie's last name, but Stephanie Poirier, Tyler Regula, Mike Smith, Lori Meem, Darnell Pendleton, Jesus Amaya, and Maria Schwiezek. I know, you always try to teach me and I always mess it up. I don't think even that would help. We also had, in addition to Councilmember Amaya and myself, Councilmember Darrell Moore came, and he brought a little one with us, so we had 10 and a half people assist us that day. So with that, Maria and Mike, would you mind coming up and I'll give you the certificates? We probably should get some pictures, I would think. Yes, you want to come down here with us? Sure. Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah.
And Vice Mayor?
What? I thought you were turning around. I don't want a picture of your bottom. It's a different picture, different website.
What website? The good website.
The cheap website.
They didn't check one off for you, so I'm going to give you Lori's. I'm going to give you Lori's. Just put your finger over top of Lori's name.
No, look at all that. I thought you were reading at 7:50. Take me with you.
Thank you all very much for coming out and helping. Oh, Maria, here it is. I didn't pull it. Oh, we appreciate you. We'd be lost without you. Thank you all very much.
Did you also do the House of Lights?
I'll do that next.
Okay, okay.
So as part of the Community Maintenance Working Group, we held the Halloween Houses of Lights. We actually increased participation by, I want to say, more than 100%. I figured out, I think it was like 150%. And as usual, we had the Scouts, Pack 1372 and Troop 1372, do the judging. And I can tell you the house that won judge's favorite, last Tuesday, or a week ago yesterday, I could hear the folks screaming from that house. And they're at the end of my street. And there was cars lined up to go there. So we do have one individual that did come tonight, but I thank everybody that participated. And Marina, would you mind coming up and we'll give you a certificate? Yessie and the mayor, would you mind?
Okay.
I got a video. You want your picture? Did we?
Another kind of
Give me one of the address
I know. You want to move me? You want to move me?
Thank you very much for participating, and hopefully you will participate in what you like to do.
That's it.
Yes.
That's what they did, bro. Sorry. That was solid, yeah.
Next, we have an update from the Community Maintenance Working Group.
All right. I promise I don't have the whole entire meeting. I'm sure. All right. So Yessie and myself and the other members of the committee wanted to give you an update of what we've been doing. As you can see, in 2023, we have achieved all of our goals. The last one is developing training on our city code, and that's a work in progress. The next slide is just a reminder of folks of where they can go to find information about us. And then now some statistics about the September 16th cleanup. As I mentioned, we had 50 pounds of collected trash, 10 and a half people for 2 hours, so that was 20 and a half hours worth of service. And you can see the different streets that we hit. And you can take a look at the pictures up in your upper right-hand corner. That's just some of the trash that we collected collectively. And you can see the pictures there of folks going about picking up the trash. I believe that's Mike Smith and Stephanie in the far left, and that's the whole group of us over there in the far right. July through October, as part of Keep the Park Beautiful, we conducted a street litter index of every street in the city. Right now, all that information is sitting with Yvette, and she's compiling it for the next round of metrics that we have to provide, Keep America Beautiful. The other big announcement that we have, we were able to purchase some cigarette receptacles. How many, Yessie?
I think it was 9.
Yeah, it was about 9, and they're now scattered throughout the city. And we are going to put some stickers on them so folks know how these receptacles came in the city. And I believe there's some here in the downtown.
That's wonderful.
Every little bit helps, right? And you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And we're thankful to all the folks that showed up on the 16th.
Sure.
And then, of course, as we noticed, we just did our Halloween Houses of Light. To your right are some of the houses that took pictures. And I can tell you at night, those houses were pretty amazing. At Trunk or Treat, the folks that won this year as the judge's best, I think they were busy preparing for that night's Haunted Trail. But like I said, we increased participation of the Halloween houses like fivefold from 2002. We figured out that we distributed more than 3,000 pieces of candy. And while we were there at the Trunk or Treat, we displayed Keep the Park Beautiful recruitment material, the list of the Halloween House of the Lights homes, and Winter Lights registrations. And we had the honor of being the last booth or last trunk that everyone visited. And I thank the committee members because they pulled together the candy that we gave to the children. So up here, we're just going to talk a little bit about what we have in store for calendar year 23. We're going to have our first organizing meeting of Keep the Park Beautiful a week from Thursday. It's going to be in this room. So we encourage anyone that's interested to come on out. December 13th will be the end of the Winter Lights Extravaganza registrations. The registrations are posted on the website. We encourage everyone to participate. And then the judging will be by the Scouts again on the 16th. And around about the 18th, we will announce who are the winners. And the 2002 winner will be the Grand Marshal for this year's Winter Lights Parade. For calendar year 24, we are once again aiming for 3 street cleanups. Doing our first stream cleanup, more grant submissions, and then more community education. And this last page, of course, is once again promoting the Winter Lights Extravaganza. We're really hoping to get more than 20 this year. There's so many houses in the city that have lights that don't participate, and we really would love to have folks come out. Last year, we even made it into Potomac. Which newspaper did we make it into?
Local.
Yeah, the Potomac Local. We were highlighted. So please, folks, join. And that's pretty much it. Any questions for Yessie and I?
Congratulations, this is great. I'm personally looking forward to the code training, development of the code training. Do you have any timetable on that?
No, not yet.
We lost the person that was supposed to help us with that.
Yes.
Yeah, Ryan Dean's assistant was the one who was working to develop those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that'll be great. when
But
that's done.
Yessie has
But-
brought forward an idea.
But I did speak to the Denora, the code enforcement, and we're hoping that we can work with her because she has obviously knowledge of the code and she's willing to come and volunteer some time and help us kind of come up with the marketing plan, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, I'll have to review her materials and. yes.
Exactly.
Any comments or questions? No? Thank you so much. Many thanks to Councilmember Hampton, Councilmember Amaya. This is a wonderful committee, wonderful working group.
Thank you. And when we were up here a few minutes ago, Mike Smith talked about the impact that this committee has made on the city, so thank you. And thank you for participating. Every time we have something, he's there.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Okay, super, okay. Moving on to information item, Manassas Drive and Polk intersection traffic light.
Good evening again. Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. So staff was asked to look into the possibility of making modifications to the Polk traffic signal at Polk and Manassas Drive. The signal is a little odd in configuration. There wasn't much right of way there years ago when the signal was put in, and people are not used to looking in different places to see all the signal heads. That makes it very confusing for some, and I think we've probably all traversed that signal at one point or another and seen somebody do something that they weren't supposed to do. So we did have a traffic signal feasibility and cost estimate study conducted. And it did look at, the existing signal and the existing conditions, and the fact that, there is a bit of an odd configuration out there and probably not all modern MUTCD compliant, and looked at the existing pedestrian amenities and said, what would it take to have upgraded pedestrian amenities, and so on. The first option that was presented was the mast arm concept, and this is where I stood up here and I think I said in public meeting that a mast arm concept would probably be very expensive. But in all honesty, this company has come up with a way to achieve the goal with a single 75-foot span mast arm. So instead of having multiple mast arms with multiple bases, multiple poles, this is one base, one pole, one long mast arm where all the signal heads mount on the single mast arm and they're visible from all 4 directions. So in this case, the mast arm option, which is usually the most durable and the less intrusive, actually comes out slightly cheaper, only $208,000 to construct a mast arm signal in that location. And the positives of that, you know, there's very little conflict with the overhead utility lines, which I also thought was going to be a huge no-no for putting in mast arms, because Novak has Comcast and Verizon running right in line with where the signal mast arms would have to go if they weren't being put on a diagonal like that. And you know, the aesthetics of a single mast arm are very nice. I don't think anybody likes the look and appearance of span wire systems anymore. They eventually sag, and then during windstorms they blow back and forth, and it's really kind of an old school design. And durability and maintenance, we really have very little maintenance. You annually check all of your bolts and everything on your existing mast arms, but very little maintenance on a mast arm system. But there is still a high cost, you know, for a single mast arm. We're talking over $200,000. The other is a span wire concept. We kind of already, used to have some span wires in the city. You still see span wires in our sister city over in Manassas. They are kind of ugly, but they're very manipulatable. And the real problem in this situation is that you're going to have to, if you install these span poles to support the span wires, you're going to have guys, and that's going to cut into unknown amounts of right-of-way. So that's really going to make the cost hard to pin down until we get to about 60 to 90% design. But the total cost estimate, because you do have to place multiple poles, is actually higher than the mast arm, $230,000. And that is going, you know, it could be cheaper with wood poles, but then wood poles have to be replaced. And the positives are it would be cost reduction if we switched from metal poles to wood poles. But then again, we'd be back at it in, you know, 20 years, fixing it again. And the negatives, you know, we don't know what the right-of-way impacts are. We haven't studied the existing right-of-way enough to know exactly where the span wires would have to go and how much right-of-way we'd have to take. And then, you know, the aesthetics and the environment, they don't look very nice. And then again, durability and maintenance. These would not be a forever system, and eventually your span wire sags, and you have to send guys out there to tighten it back up, and they can be problematic in windstorms, things like that. But we would be using a lot of the existing infrastructure that's already out there to expand upon the existing pedestrian amenities. So none of that will really be known. There's a ton more safety options that will be available at this intersection that will really come to fruition during design. But at this point, just a basic understanding of 2 really nice methods to solve the problem and get an MUTCD compliant signal out there. But staff is really just looking for guidance from the governing body on how to move forward with this, what to put into the budget, if anything.
Okay. Well, thank you, Calvin, for all the work that went into this. I think the mast arm recommendation is very wise. Are there any comments or questions? Yes.
I have a question. Can the mast arm, can you paint that black? And what would the cost be to paint it black?
So
That looks nice,
we
yeah.
have painted them. I believe we painted Mathis. You're not supposed to. They come galvanized. You really should order a pole in the beginning that's black. And
How
that
much
way
is
they
that?
usually powder coat it or coat it, surface coat it, and it's not a galvanized pole. The whole argument is galvanized. Paint doesn't stick well to galvanized metal. So they say you're gonna paint it and then it's gonna slough off. We
Right.
had great results at Mathis. It held up for a long time
Yeah.
and it's just now starting to peel and flake, and that was probably.
The ones on Euclid are black, right?
Yes, those were ordered black, just like the ones out here at Park Central
So
Plaza.
if we ordered this black,
Yes, I think all of our signal specs now require the
So it will
builder
be
to
black
order
then.
black.
I have a question on the topic on Euclid, they have a light pole, that's common.
Mhm.
Will this have that on the,
Yeah, it's the same, every signal we've looked at, even Euclid, we've looked at putting those lights on there just to increase illumination in the middle of the
so it will have that?
intersection.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the pedestrian crosswalks, and the lights that tell the pedestrian to walk, because right now, the way it is, where people cross and where the light is that tells you to cross are not one and the same. Are we gonna have the pedestrian crosses on, or I forget what they call the pedestrian cross signals, on each of the corners or just on one?
No, it'll be on each of the corners.
Okay.
That's, a lot of the study talked about using existing infrastructure, because we have existing infrastructure out there right now for the light poles, the actual signal head poles, but that same infrastructure, the underground conduit, the bases and everything can be used to mount pedestrian signal heads.
Okay.
Now, how much of that we'll be able to use, it's gonna take design.
Right.
Because you want those fairly well centered with your, and you want them at the very edge of your sidewalk so that people with accessibility issues don't have to reach for them. They should be right there.
Right.
So there's a lot of study that still has to go into it. There's, this last slide is all potential additional safety improvements. We'll be looking at everything. This was a preliminary feasibility study. I was really happy to see that they can achieve the goal with a single 75-foot mast arm because it's low maintenance and it's the best looking option. But no, we'll still be looking at all those pedestrian improvements. And yes, there will be hand-man countdowns like everyone is used to.
Okay.
So.
I just wanted to know that, because that can be a rather treacherous intersection if you're crossing as a pedestrian, B, if you're the person driving, the pedestrians are crossing where they're not supposed to be crossing. So, thank you.
Okay. If, say, for example, the mast arm option were placed into the CIP, does that mean that the additional safety improvements would also be placed into the CIP?
So we won't have a final cost on those. This is a preliminary estimate.
Okay.
We would start designing it, and that would probably be as soon as the money was available in the CIP, be it the second half of this fiscal year or the next fiscal year. We would start the design process. We would request estimates at 30, 60, 90, and 100%. So all of these potential safety improvements would be evaluated and costed into cost estimates in increments until we get to 100% design. And then, we can bid certain things as adults with the project if we need to control the budget. But anytime we're talking about additional safety improvements, they're usually going to make it into the final project. So.
Comments or questions?
Hey, thank you, Calvin. Can this be either partially or not, if not full, covered in any grant money? Like Safe Streets, I forgot the name of the grant that we were, just a couple months ago, we were getting estimates for improvements.
There's always the potential for revenue sharing dollars where we apply and split the costs with VDOT. That's usually a 50-50, approximately 50-50 split of the costs. We can look at other grant options. This project's small. It's not going to qualify for the larger programs like Smart Scale. It's not going to be regionally significant to qualify for MBTA 70% funds. But we can always look into safety grants and see what money we can use, ask our friends at VDOT for some help in finding a grant or two to apply for. So
Yeah.
it probably would mean delaying construction until the grant funding period, but that's usually how grants work. So.
And I know this is just preliminary studies, but you made a note here that it will be reducing parking on that side. What does that mean? Like, what, it would take additional space?
So
On
to
the curb?
configure the intersection correctly, we may need to have bump outs. We may wind up taking, a little more sidewalk back into somebody's yard. But just basically now looking at as we were talking about the pedestrian configuration, we may have to bump out a little bit to provide safe access for pedestrians.
Yeah.
And that would probably cut into the on-street parking. But you're not supposed to park within 20 feet of an intersection
intersection,
anyways.
correct.
But this is gonna push, this depends on where the pedestrians eventually wind up crossing in the final design. But you could wind up losing parking.
And that's what you're saying, the width of the street might be reduced as well because of these bump outs?
Yeah, the bump out to provide to provide sort of a visual buffer. It
Right.
condenses the traffic towards the middle of the road to provide safe haven for the pedestrians.
Okay. No, I mean, this is great. I think this is something we should consider, bringing the CIP. Because the light, like I think I brought this up a couple months back, that when you're driving, you can't even see those traffic lights in the side, and it just, until you just get up really close to it. So, I mean,
So
yeah.
you're in favor of placing?
Yeah, that's what I'm
it
saying. I
down?
think I'm in favor of placing this in the CIP.
Okay. Oh, are you also?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in
Yes.
favor? Okay. Do we need to decide upon the option, or?
Yeah, that would be our preference, that you direct us which option to budget for in the
First one.
25 CIP.
Okay, okay. What is your preference? The
First-
arm?
The arm, first one.
Mast arm?
Yep.
What is your preference?
No preference.
No problem, okay. Well, I prefer the mast arm.
Yeah, mast arm.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So do you have sufficient direction?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Calvin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of October 17th and October 24th, adoption of an ordinance declaring 204 pieces of furniture as surplus equipment, and authorizing city manager to dispose of the furniture according to Article 15 of Chapter 2 of the Code of the City of Manassas Park as presented, and recommendation by the governing body to the Prince William Circuit Court for the appointment of Mr. Rick Garrett to serve on the city's Board of Zoning Appeals for a term that will expire on March 21st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, so moving on to new business. 11A is extension of real estate tax due.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of the governing body. This request came from our treasurer. She hasn't received the real estate property tax book yet from the Commissioner of Revenue. That's required before she can send out real estate tax bills. We're already well into November. Usually she would have already issued those out last week, so it'd be unfair to ask residents to pay a bill they haven't received by December 5th. So I'm recommending that we push the due date back to January 5th, even if she gets it, this week and pushes it out. It'd be unfair to ask for residents to pay for it during the holidays because of this delay.
Okay, well, that's very straightforward. Any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any indication of when she might get the tax book?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, do you have a question?
It's not a question, it's just more of a comment. I mean, this is becoming a year-over-year trend. And I'm trying to figure out how we could get a step ahead of this, or, I mean, if this is something that we need to sit down with the commissioner or treasurer and figure out our software or whatever we need to do. But it's not fair to our residents that every year that we can't get these things on time,
Yeah.
And people plan for these type of things financially, so.
And you're right, it's not fair to the residents, but it's important for the residents to also understand that those are two independently elected constitutional offices, and we really have no control,
Yeah, no, I understand that, but they're still within the city,
yeah.
and, we put our names behind that too, so.
We're going to help them. We're currently implementing a new tax software, so we're hoping it's live by July. If it is, then hopefully it'll make it a much easier process to develop the real estate tax book and the personal property tax book next year. So that's what we can do, is help out with software, but also software implementation with Keith, which Keith is leading. It's also dependent on their participation as well.
That's a bright spot on the horizon, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay.
So I would like to echo again, it is a planning issue. It's also a planning issue for the city, because you have to be able to forecast and have revenue in that comes in and be able to have accurate revenue as it's in. So again, it is an issue for the city as well. So again, this shouldn't be a constant issue every year. It's it's not, we have to be on top of this. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So, I know, based on the past experience, what's the impact upon our revenue and the impact upon your planning for fiscal '25?
Yeah, so no impact on revenue, impact on cash, so delay in cash receipts for about a month, and those are the most important sources of cash is real estate tax, so that is a cash impact. We still have ARPA, and we have a relatively stronger fund balance now, so I think we can manage it in the future as ARPA goes away. It might be more challenging to manage that. Definitely we won't. Real estate's a little bit easier. It's more self-explanatory what the tax revenue is going to be because it's based off the assessments, which we get much sooner. So that won't be impacted except for the elderly and disabled and veteran tax relief. We won't know what those numbers are until the property book is. So if that's delayed, then I won't have that information. But again, I'm presenting the budget by April, so I should have the data back by then. So it's not helpful, but it's not the end of the world. But cash is the bigger concern, is us reaching a difficult cash position if we didn't have ARPA right now. But again, our fund balance is getting to a point where we can probably deal with it in the future as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, one last question.
Yeah.
Do you remember how many was delinquent payments we had because of the past 2 times we've extended the due date? Probably don't know off the top of your head, though.
No, our collections, so there's a couple of delinquencies. So if you're saying for first half bills, payment after the date versus kind of previous fiscal years, we always have people paying late.
Right.
I'm not sure that's necessarily impacted. I talked to the treasurer.
We haven't seen
about that.
There's no court. We haven't
No,
seen
I mean,
anything.
we had a slight dip, I would say, in tax rate collection for real estate tax last year. We were at over 100%, but that, I think, from previous years was simply just a collection from previous years that caused that. But even from the current year, we were getting close to 100% collection. Last year, FY23, I want to say we were closer to 98%, which is still kind of where we want to be and
Right.
much better than the high 80s when I started here. So Patty's doing a wonderful job with collections. Personal property tax, we're still at over 100% because of parking enforcement of decals, bringing people in to register their cars. So that's fine. So tax collection overall has gotten much better. So I'm not too worried about that
There's
aspect.
not much of,
Yeah.
there's minimal, if any, impact.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's unfair to residents, and
Yeah.
it really makes us look incompetent. And to the mayor's point, again, we have different institutions of government that are completely independent, and it's designed like that by the Virginia Constitution. We're designed to be inefficient, and unfortunately, because we're a smaller jurisdiction, we don't have the same resources, so it makes it even more challenging.
Yeah. We may have some influence, but we have no control. Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if there are none, the staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and adopt an ordinance to provide an extension of the due date for real estate taxes to January 5th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 11B, Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program Grant Application. And it's Calvin again.
Good evening again. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. This is in regards to the FY25 Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP. This is a grant application resolution of support that we're requesting tonight. VDOT is currently accepting applications, and we submitted an preliminary application on 10/31 in the VDOT Smart Portal. HSIP is guided by VDOT's Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and it's a mixture of federal and state funding. We were actually awarded in FY23, awarded $129,428 to spend in preliminary engineering in this fiscal year, and then $1,149,838 in construction funds that we'll expend in FY26 and FY27. So we have been awarded substantial amounts of money in this program before. The FY25 application would just build on the progress of the current design that is in place. We're asking for $785,565 with no match. And the funds would be available in FY25 for preliminary engineering.
Comments or questions? No?
Just
No?
thank you to Steve for being so proactive with these grants. It's fantastic.
Any comments, questions? HSIP, you look pensive.
Oh, no question. This is I like, this is no city match, right? So, I mean, this is great, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body adopt a resolution in support of the City of Manassas Parks FY25 VHSIP grant application and authorize the city manager to accept any funding received resulting from the application as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 11C, budget amendment to Connor Drive Extension Project.
Okay, that's Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. So Connor Drive is well underway. I was out there for an on-site meeting this morning to discuss potential change orders. And there have been quite a few change orders on this job. Some of them have wound up good, some of them have wound up bad. But all in all, we've actually seen almost $319,000 in change orders on this project. But in the process of sifting through the options on these change orders, we found nearly $70,000 in available credits. So you do one type of work and you get credit for another type of work that you're canceling off the project. So we actually are in about a $250,000 change order position. And the biggest fear right now is we're walking the last little section that needs to be stoned before final pavement can go down. And we're out there this morning watching a truck, what we call pumping. They're driving over the dirt and the dirt's just pumping under the tires. The tires are cutting into it, and that really needs to be pulled out. CTA material, concrete treated aggregate put down so that we're not paving this road just to have it fall apart in 10, 15 years. We really are watching the budget, and we're at that point where now we know, even with the contingency that we originally built into the governing body's budget for FY23, even carrying that money over into FY24, we're not going to have enough money to pay the last couple bills. So we're asking for $150,000 in supplemental funding. Do I think we'll spend it all? No. The answer today was not nearly as bad as we anticipated before the on-site meeting. So we'll probably have a little money left over at the end of the project, but $150,000 would guarantee us that we can pay all the bills on time when they come in, and we're not telling somebody, well, we need governing body approval before we can pay you. So we're asking for $150,000 in supplemental funding just to finish this project off.
And just want to remind everyone that we have the money for this because another project came far under budget, the Manassas Drive Culvert project. We didn't spend about $1 million in MVTA funds from that one. So we have more than enough to cover this project.
Questions, comments?
Sorry. My only question was the change orders. What were the change orders that were made by the city or by the engineers?
Well, so it originally started with just the fact that we were in a huge, this project kicked off right with the supply chain issues. And in order to relocate UOSA's force main, which was always intended to be a part of this project, not relocate the entirety of the force main, but just an area of the force main where the road had to be cut out and the depth increased. That relocation material, that material that you will suspect, was going to be over 18 months lead.
Wow.
So the project wasn't going to happen, and we were just going to see. We were dealing with 8% rate of inflation, and we were just watching the project climb and climb and climb. So we had to have some engineering change orders to redesign the project partially to avoid conflict with UOSA's force main. Then that led into redesigning storm boxes and redesigning stormwater conveyance, because once you start redesigning an area, it's kind of a
That's what I figured, like a
effect.
domino effect,
Yes,
essentially.
exactly. And then when we actually got, originally Bowman, when they were analyzing the roadway and trying to come up with a pavement design, they did pavement cores down the center of the roadway. But a lot of the utilities that were either placed or relocated on the edge of the roadway were really put back with poor fill, and the contractor started noticing that even at sidewalk construction. There were areas under the sidewalk where they couldn't pass compaction tests to keep the project moving, and we wound up bringing in better material to try to fill those areas so that we'd have a stable end product. A lot of the change orders ever since the UOSA fiasco have just been poor materials on the site.
Okay. Then my next question is like the contingencies that are built in to these contracts. Have they been touched, or can they be used for these change orders, or?
So
or-
we've already tapped the,
Oh, it's already tapped out?
We've tapped out the
I
contingencies
see.
that we put in with your initial approval of the contract. We've
Yeah.
already exceeded those contingencies. That's why we know that the last couple bills, there's not gonna be money to pay.
Right. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, comments or questions? Anybody? Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body authorize the carryover of $1,353,782.61 from the FY '23 budget to the FY '24 budget and amend the FY '24 budget to include an additional $150,000 in NVTA funds devoted to the Connor Drive Extension project as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Thanks,
you.
Calvin. Okay, moving on to 11D is appointment to the Planning Commission. A second applicant has withdrawn their application due to increasing work commitments. So that was Mr. Frank Jones. So the remaining applicants are Maria Sywak and Kevin Petak. Do we have a motion?
I move that the governing body appoint Kevin Petak to serve on the planning commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2026.
No?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 50th Anniversary Committee discussion. Okay.
Okay. So, our last meeting, we discussed the idea of a 50th anniversary committee because July 1, 2025 is the 50th anniversary of us becoming a city. It's also the 70th anniversary of the first homes being built in Manassas Park. The committee makeup, and and I realize there is an error there. Our consensus was 3 city council members, 4 Manassas Park residents, and then the city manager or representative that he appoints, and if as needed, subcommittees. There will be a monthly reporting at the governing body meeting, once a month at a governing body meeting. There will be formal minutes. There will be funding from the fiscal '25 budget, and reporting on that funding will be, and the money spent on that funding will be included in that monthly report. We're also going to look at sponsorships and other to-be-determined external funds to offset the costs. The timeline and activities will be determined by the committee. The timeline is a little bit more than a year-long celebration of the June 30th, 1975 anniversary. And the time frame will be July 1, 2024 to September 1, 2025. That's so we can also include the 50th anniversary of establishing our schools. And if I remember correctly, when we became a city, we had, I think it was less than 2 months to set up our school system. So that's the recap of the consensus. And then what we have on the second page is the establishment of the committee. Dean and I worked on this so that there would be continuation if there's a change in the governing body. So, any questions?
No questions.
We will need to do some recruitment, but the initial members, of course, will be myself and Ms. Connor,
Okay.
because those folks that we knew when we put this together.
Right. Comments or questions? Let's see. Councilmember Jabed, do you have any comments or questions?
No, July 1st, 2025 is the anniversary?
Yes,
I'll just write that down.
yeah.
He's volunteering to be the.
Okay, well, if there's no comments or questions, I'm sorry.
No,
did you
no,
have-
I thought he was volunteering to be one of the 3 council.
I'm sorry,
I
what?
thought he was volunteering to be one of the 3
Oh.
council.
Oh,
Are we deciding that right now? or-
Is that, I thought
were you?
Oh, I was just asking the date.
Well, I think
Oh, is that-
first we have to
Wait for
pronounce.
Daryl.
Well, we have to create the committee first.
Right, right.
Okay,
And then we'll set out announcements recruiting folks.
right.
And I will tell you, I've heard from residents including the children of past city council members, past mayors, past school board members that are very excited about this and have stories to share.
Excellent, yeah, super. Well, let's move on to approval of the resolution then. Staff recommendation is that we approve the resolution establishing the 50th anniversary committee for Manassas Park.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Do you have any further expectations from this item tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to driveway discussion, part 4.
Yes, and I promise this is the last thing I present tonight. This is the last part of the discussion that we started all the way back, I think June or July of this year. And so far, to kind of recap, what we've decided was a different size for driveways for houses that have, 100 feet yards? The yards were 100 feet?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That was following Manassas. They allow 24 feet, and I recommended 27.
So we have that. We made that decision. We also made the decision to have those businesses that are permitted within the city to have 2 commercial vehicles park in their driveway, so it reflects our commercial parking. Do we know when the public hearings will be for that? Because there has to be, planning commission, then here, correct?
I have not received a timeline.
I think Dean is working on the.
Okay.
Yeah. Dean, are you there?
Yeah, I am here, yeah. So we just need to get it to the planning commission first. So planning commission meets in December. The governing body can then hear it at the second meeting and could vote on it that night too, if felt it was important.
Yeah, this way that
Thank you.
it's in effect by the January 1.
Right, okay.
Okay, so tonight's discussion has to do with backyard parking. This is something that for years people have complained about. I've get complaints about it. What you have here are pictures that are taken from Google Earth of the different backyards and the backyard parking. What I pulled here was the minutes from the last meeting, where Winchester is the only one that prohibits backyard parking, and where most jurisdictions.
That was the only one we found. There
Right.
might be others, yeah.
In our research. And most jurisdictions say that the backyard has to be on a paved surface. So what we need to determine tonight is, do we leave the backyard parking as is, which technically now, right, Dean, there's not supposed to be backyard parking unless it's on a paved surface?
I don't believe that's a requirement right now. I'll have to verify that, but I think right now backyard parking is okay.
It's a wild, wild west.
Well, I thought it was required on paved surface.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
It might be, I'll have to verify that, though. I know we certainly have done that for the front yards, but let me check in the backyards.
And so you've seen in the backyard parkings, we've had everything from the trailer part, I guess it's the tractor part of a tractor trailer, to all sorts of commercial vehicles. When Yessie and I were out trying to recruit people for the Halloween Houses of Light, we passed one house that had probably a few dozen cars in the backyard that you could see from the street. So we do, and you can see some of these pictures here, we do have some issues.
Yeah. Do you get the impression, the home with the several dozen cars in the backyard, do you think it's like a repair shop? Are they renting rooms to people? Are they renting parking spots?
I haven't a clue, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
And most of these are violations here because they're not paved surfaces. Well, soon this is going to be a violation as well because of the permitted vehicle definition. These I'd have to look closely at the types of vehicles, but that would be kind of one that could be feasible. What other jurisdictions do as well, or the other one that I found was Williamsburg, which says they allow backyard parking, but I think it was like only 30% of the area, of the surface area, and it had to be paved as well. So that's another option as well to allow some backyard parking, but prevent something like this from occurring.
And I think also having, I would imagine preventing the whole backyard from being paved
Yes.
also helps with flooding.
Right. I would think that it would be more preferable to have some paving and to not allow people to park on the grass because there's environmental issues as well. leaking vehicles, et cetera,
Right.
yeah.
Quality of life for the neighbors.
Yes.
The other jurisdictions you saw, what was the cap on paving? Because I wouldn't want to see like even 80% paving the backyard.
Most of them
That's
didn't
excessive.
mention any. Williamsburg was the one that called it out. They had a combined front yard and backyard. So they had, that you could do X in your front, X in your back, but the total can't exceed. But I'll get you those percentages. I have it from a previous, but I want to say it was about 30%, 20 or 30% total
And no one
coverage.
had a cap on a car, even with 30%? They didn't say. you
The
could-
cap on the number of cars? No, they didn't cap
I mean,
that.
I would like to see a cap on the number of vehicles as well. I don't.
Yeah, that's, we'd have to incorporate that in our code, and we'd have to see if that's permitted for us to do so.
Yep. I have a question, like the picture on the left, the bottom one.
Yeah.
How could that be continuous if we have code enforcement?
Can you
'Cause
speak into your
Sorry.
microphone?
The picture right there at the bottom, how can it gone to that level? Because that takes time to get like that, and has code enforcement not?
I'd have to get that specific address, and if we could see it from the street, we can cite it, or if the neighbors allow us to go on their property and see it, then we can take them to court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And the problem is, just to reiterate, because I know people are frustrated, we take cases like this to court, and the judge just keeps giving them more and more and more time. We get a judge ruling against them, fine and injunction to fix it. We bring it back, and the judge still gives them more and more. So they disobey the judge's order, and the judge still gives them more and more time. So it is incredibly frustrating, and I get everyone's frustrations, but it's not lack of trying. We're bringing these cases to courts, but the judges are just very lenient on these cases.
You're able to fine per day in this situation, correct? You can actually, there's a.
I would have to look at this. Not all codes allow us, because I think, Calvin, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a zoning violation here. So I'm not sure you can fine per day for a zoning violation.
Thank you.
Can evidence provided by a drone flying over top, can that be held up?
No, just for public safety. And that's one of the challenges too, and Councilmember Hampton and I were talking about this offline when we talk about legislative priorities. A lot of these things are zoning violations, which to your point doesn't allow us to fine. If we could ticket people, like if the state law allowed us to actually fine people on a day-to-day basis, take them to collection, put a lien on their property, I think that'd be a better way to do this versus having to take them to court and ask the judge. Same thing with car and yard, right? It's very difficult to enforce that, because people just move their car and now they're in compliance and they keep doing it again.
Yeah.
So if we were able to actually fine someone every time they did that, then you could actually get some change. But that would require state law change to allow us to do that in our
Did you
code.
put something of that nature into?
I did not. No, I had a conversation with Councilmember Hampton, but I wasn't sure if that was something we all wanted to do or not.
Okay. That sure does make sense.
Yep,
It does.
Does make sense.
Because what we have to work with now is not working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's not. It
And I'm pretty sure we're not the only jurisdiction.
Right.
That deals
Do you-
with this?
Do you want me to add that to the legislative agenda?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes. Is that agreeable to all?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think we've got to
And-
try and exhaust all of our possibilities.
Mayor, I do have a follow-up on the surfacing required.
Yeah, thank you, Dean.
Okay, yeah, Laszlo is correct. So it has to be stable material such as asphalt or concrete for any off-street parking areas. So that includes in the backyard.
Okay.
Is there a percentage cap? No.
All right, so let's
Not in the,
go ahead, Dean.
I was gonna say, not in the parking area. Now, some residential areas or some areas of the city do require that you have to have at least a certain percentage that is not impervious, but I'd have to check somewhere else for that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, so, maybe we can start sketching out some things that we want so that the staff can investigate and see if it's feasible.
But that's not even a parking, for me, that's more like a storage.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even consider that into a parking category.
Yeah.
That's like a storage.
Sure
Of
looks like
cars.
storage,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Well, the city manager said that's a zoning violation.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. But my whole, I guess my point is that if we're deciding on backyard parking, me personally, I would like to hold off until we see the commercial vehicles off the street first. I can't make any decision yet until we do like maybe another work session on parking. Because what I don't want to see is that, okay, with that left picture out the way, I don't want to see the cars flooding from the driveway to.
But,
to the
but
street.
that's what's gonna happen now, because
Yes.
it is permitted now. So that's what
Yeah.
Councilmember Hammond is asking, is like, do we want to keep it like this? Because right now, this would be permitted if it's paved. But
Right,
now,
if
to your
it's-
point, if cars are gonna be taken off the streets, right, and taken to the backyard, is that something that we want to allow or not?
Right. And I'll tell you right now, it really is happening. I've seen it myself. I've seen it where people have taken their backyards and taken gravel, put it down, and the cars are in the backyards now.
Yeah.
Enough so that you can, almost up to the neighbor's fence. So it's there.
Now, I am doing town halls starting tomorrow night as well
Yeah.
on parking, commercial parking specifically. So, some of the FAQ, the questions is like, you're reducing our number of parking spaces. Don't do that, right? So just one word of caution, if we're going to restrict this, right? People can get frustrated. Some people want this, never to see this, right? And you can't blame them, being a neighbor and seeing something like that behind your neighbor's yard. But then others are going to say, well, where are we supposed to park? Right? That's
Well,
just going to
what
be a
I'm saying. So
concern.
I'm like, I think the goal, what I'm trying to understand is that you want to prohibit backyard parking, which will
Not-
contradict
No,
our.
I'm not gonna say prohibit. Right now, it's a wild, wild west.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
So there are houses where the whole yard is door to door, not door to door, but
Yeah.
car to car. Like I said, we passed one house that had at least a couple dozen cars in the backyard. And, on the west side, these houses are a quarter of an acre at best. A backyard with a couple dozen cars. You've got other houses like you see right here. Back in February, I had a resident call me over, stand in her kitchen, and out both of her, you look out her kitchen, the house over here, the house over there, over top of that resident's wood fence, all you saw were the box tops of box trucks. And that resident said, I can't sit in my house, I can't sit in my backyard in peace anymore.
Right,
I'm
I mean,
just
that's what I'm saying,
surrounded by
that's a
trucks.
whole different issue then.
No, it's the same thing, it's all
Yeah.
because of backyard parking. So we're not saying get rid of it, we're saying let's put some guidelines around
Yeah,
it.
no, I agree
It's
with
a
that.
wild, wild
We
west.
do the guidelines.
We want to
and-
try to bring it back to some sense of normalcy,
Yeah, no, I agree.
neighborhood normalcy,
Being in a residential area.
residential normalcy, yeah.
And this is not the first time we've discussed this. I mean, we've had this discussion, I think this is our fourth discussion
Yeah.
since June. We've discussed it time before.
Yeah, because the question you're asking, leave as is, I'm trying to apply, what are we leaving as is?
There's no restrictions. It's
So you
wild,
want-
wild west.
So
Right, but right
either
now, we know
paved-
that,
We know it needs to be paved, right? We just clarified that. So all these will be literally in violation right now.
Yeah, this
So we can
depends.
technically enforce it right now, starting tomorrow, we can enforce it.
We'd have to adopt it and all that.
right. Well,
I have a question.
to enforce it though, they would need a next door neighbor to call and say, come in my backyard
Well, yeah.
and take a look.
Yeah. And leave as this is also going to change in January, because certain types of commercial vehicles are going to be prohibited, and then you're only going to allow 2 on your property.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with the fact that you say we should wait and to see how the commercial vehicle situation is either gonna fix or make it worse before we
Correct.
decide to do, what to do with the backyard stuff. Because you're right, it could be storage and it could kind of clear up the whole parking in the back because you won't be allowed to have more than 2 vehicles. So I'm with you in the waiting to see how the commercial parking will play out before we do anything regarding this area. Because you're right, some people are gonna be telling, then where am I gonna park?
And I'd like to hear your response in the town halls, what you kind of hear, and also, but I'd like to see a cap on the number in the backyard as well.
So cap on total number of cars parked in the
I would
backyard.
like to see that. I can't picture living with a series of cars in a backyard. I've never lived like that, so I don't.
Oh, it stinks.
I mean, but I don't think it's proper behavior for, in a community.
Well, if you have a car that's recreational, then you have a car that's your commute, and you have a car that's your commercial, that's 3 cars just
No,
for
I
you.
agree, but if you have a driveway in the front, unless you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can't imagine having 9 cars. I mean, I'm not wealthy like that, so
Yeah.
My
You made a point.
concern,
I don't live that life.
I have a concern with waiting, simply because if people start preemptively paving their backyard, and now they've paved their yard, and we're gonna decide that you can't, it's already done.
Yeah, like if we
So-
set a limit of 30% or 35%.
Right, I think we should set a limit of how much of your yard you can pave. I mean, don't we do this for impervious surface on developments coming in?
Yeah, and it's a little bit easier with those because we receive, site plans and building plans, so it's easier for us to kind of track it that way.
Yeah, well, I also think it's for flooding purposes. If you pave your entire backyard or even more than half of it, I'd imagine your neighbor's gonna be eating that
Yeah.
runoff.
Yeah.
So I think it would be important, I don't know how it hasn't been done already, but I think it's important to set some sort of, you cannot pave more than X amount of your entire yard. And I think we should do that before people get the idea that they
Well, that,
could
And
pave
can I
it.
bring this up on my town halls, just so that we can hear from residents
Yeah.
Yes.
now?
Yeah,
Yes.
and you
Okay.
have what, three
Can
town
I
halls
answer
coming
the
up?
question?
Yes, Dean?
Yeah, I just want to say, so in the R1 district, which is most of the west side, there is no maximum coverage that I could find. However, on the east side, most of those are in the planned unit development zoning district, and there is a maximum of 70, that's 70% of the gross area for the development can be impervious. Okay, but unfortunately, that's for the development that comes in. So you'd have to look at each individual property. Now, there is a waiver for lot coverage that's available. So if someone came in and conceivably they wanted to do more than 70% of their yard, they could get a waiver. That would have to go through the governing body.
So right now it's at 70%?
Only on the majority of the east side, where you have the newer development that was done with the planned unit development zoning district. On the west side, it's mostly R1, the single family unit, houses over there, and there is no similar requirement over there that I've found.
What was your question? I thought you had a question to me.
Oh, how many, there are 3 or 4 town halls?
Yeah, there's one tomorrow night, one, I believe, Monday night, and then next Wednesday and Thursday night.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
So
there's
four
four.
total. So one here in English, one on the west side in English, one on the east side in English, and then one back here in Spanish.
okay. So by the time we come back, the first part of December,
We'll
you'll,
have feedback, yeah.
okay.
Or at least let residents know that you guys are talking about this issue, to at least let you guys know, because some of the comments we got was, well, we weren't involved in this process of making this decision, even though we had town halls. So
Right.
if they're coming out angry now, I can let them know, hey, we're talking about another issue as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
and the whole issue with the pavement is, like, we don't have any storm management in the city. We're ordinance or code or anything regarding how percentage of, I guess, the front or backyard could be paved or not paved.
Yeah, we don't have that, to Dean's point, in the R1. We do have it in the PUD.
Right.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense if we established one first?
Yeah, I believe that's what you're getting at, right? Is you want to establish the percentages of coverage.
So like a storm management,
Yeah. That
You
was
can
Alana's
use that
point.
as a justification.
yeah.
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 What's that?
So wait, so you're saying there's no, on the R1 zone, there's no restriction on the amount of pavement that can be paved?
Mhm.
It's
Well, on the
literally
backyard.
On the backyard
Yeah,
only?
yep.
Okay.
So technically, we could start enforcing right now, but we would have to have a neighbor invite staff into their backyard. Or
Yeah,
it
or we'd
would
have
be
to see it.
visible from the front.
Correct,
from
yeah.
the street. Okay.
And just to clarify, actually, more, even in the front yard, you can have more. It's limited in how much of that can be a driveway for cars versus flower pots and other things as well. So there's less restrictions on the west side.
Yeah, and there's not a restriction on the backyard per se, it's the total lot area, the percentage that can be impervious. So that includes the driveway from the front yard, and the house itself. And then like a shed or anything like that as well, that's all impervious.
And my definition of parking would be operable, like vehicles that are actually working, right? So that picture right there, I won't consider that's a storage, and that's a violation of zoning code, whatever you want to say. It's inoperable vehicles.
If they're inoperable vehicles, then yes. If they're
Yeah,
not
so, I mean,
inoperable, then it's
they're
not.
they're not using it as a parking, they're using it as a storage.
That's per your definition.
Or
They
junk-
can say, hey,
or
I'm using
junk
this for
yard.
parking.
You know what I'm saying?
Under law, it's not prohibited unless those are inoperable vehicles,
Yeah.
or soon, more than 2 commercial or not permitted commercial vehicles.
Or it could be car repair.
Yeah, but I mean, we
Which
get
is-
complaints about that, we go and they say, we're not doing that. Yeah. It's hard to prove.
Right, and I've gotten 2 complaints about car repairs.
Oh, yeah, I
You
mean,
know-
no one wants to see a junkyard in the backyard.
Mhm.
My whole point was that we don't want to also restrict parking on people's properties, contradicting of what our goal is to ease parking on-street parking.
At the same time, you also
Right.
need to protect the quality of life of the neighbors next door.
Mhm.
So what's the quality of life if you have a backyard, but your next door neighbor has cars that are just the whole backyard's filled,
And the
right
envi-
up to your fence?
Well, that's what I said, you want to add restrictions, we can add restrictions, yeah.
Well, and then there's the environmental consideration.
Right, yeah.
I mean, looking at that, that is so abnormal.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see just how abnormal that is.
And all I did was go on Google Maps and just looked, or Google Earth, and just looked around.
Yeah.
That's all I did.
Yeah, I just don't want, we just spend millions of dollars doing this commercial vehicle, and all of a sudden, it didn't solve anything. You know what I'm saying?
We spent 250,000. I just want to clarify that, not
Yeah.
How
millions.
much?
It was a million.
$250,000.
Yeah.
Well, initially, I'll talk about the initial estimate.
Yeah, the
I
concern
guess
was
you're
it was gonna be
right,
1.2 million, you're
250,000,
right.
Don't pass around misinformation. It was
Yeah.
not several million.
yeah. Right, so
Right.
either way, it's
Okay.
six figure, you know, and then going around and literally not solve anything that we put this plan to.
Okay.
So that's why I'm suggesting to wait, but if you guys want to put something in place before we start enforcing the commercial, then I
Well, I
guess,
think what we had just talked about is the feedback from the upcoming,
sure.
Laszlo was gonna float this information during the upcoming sessions. He'll be able to collect feedback from the residents. And then when we meet in December, I was gonna say January, I don't know why, but in December, we can then look at that feedback, take a look at this, take a look at what we found out so far, look at the feedback, and then come to some sort of resolution.
Yeah, but I do think the vice mayor makes a great point. If we have this law and now a lot of people start paving, and then we change the law after, like, I just spent money doing this, they're gonna be very upset. It'd be
Yeah.
better to set the
Yeah.
guidelines before we start
Absolutely.
enforcing, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it should be a very defendable percentage.
Mhm.
Is there a way to pull their addresses and see if they have business licenses?
We could, yeah. But again, even business license enforcement is difficult as well.
Okay,
Home occupation permit would be the only way, but again, that's voluntary
yeah, of
permit.
course.
Yeah, and something like this is inadmissible in court. You can't use this.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Neighbors will provide pictures, and
Uh-huh,
we'd love to be able to use that. We can't. It has to be a code enforcement officer testifying to the judge.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Have we given sufficient guidance?
I think so.
So to recap, the guidance is you'll float the idea during the upcoming town halls. You'll bring the feedback to us.
Well, I'm going to encourage them to let us know. Send us emails, city clerk and myself, to you all. Just let us know what your position is. Think about it, and let us know how you'd want backyards to be regulated. And we may hear different things from different parts of the city as well.
Yeah.
True,
Yeah.
yeah. You might want to push that out over social media.
We can do that,
Yeah,
as part of a follow-up to the town hall's discussions.
Yeah, okay, okay,
And I can reach back out to the residents who've reached out to me
yes, Yeah.
with concerns about this.
yeah. Yes, because we need to hear from them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
well, that's it.
Okay.
Those are the next steps.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to our next public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? This is our second public comment time. Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we move on to city manager's report. Laszlo, do you have anything else?
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we have no closed session. So anything else for the good of the city?
I have, Laszlo. So I was speaking to Melissa, and, I think the people that come with the kangaroos and the llamas have camels. And we were thinking that if we could maybe have them parade on the Christmas light parade. Would that be something we could do? Like the 3 camels for the 3 wise men? It would be cool.
Let me talk it over with the committee
Melissa? Okay.
and the police.
You
And
put lights on them and dress them
yeah,
up?
I don't want to set up any expectations here. We struggle enough managing the band.
If they're
Uh,
gonna
I-
parade, do they wear poop bags?
I don't think I want to
Okay,
manage
should have had all
camels.
that stuff,
Yeah, But it's something we can look at, or maybe at least incorporate maybe into the downtown festivities.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much the entire
whole
length of
parade.
Manassas Drive. Eh?
I'm just,
Or like a horse and carriage.
yeah, why not? I mean, we had reindeers, maybe we can have camels and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll bring it up to the
Yeah,
committee.
just try to
Thanks.
think of all the unintended consequences that could happen. Okay. Anything else? Okay, do we have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Dean. Good night.